This is the second video to cover my new community wargame, Castles and Crusaders. If you haven't watched the first one yet, maybe go do that first. There's a link in the description. Before the game could start, there were a few things the players needed to do to make sure everyone was on the same page and ready to play. In the 2 weeks before the first turn took place, I gave the community time to organize. Following a few simple guidelines, the players divided into 4 warbands and chose one of the 5 missions that I had prepared. One mission in particular had an exceptionally large map and a higher difficulty listed, so 2 warbands chose to go there together, working on 2 fronts simultaneously and helping each other out when needed. In the last few days before their first orders were due, I asked the now established warbands to name themselves, submit a banner, and choose from several collective strategic actions that I designed for them, like scouting, fortifying a location, or researching a topic of their choice for some extra information. The Chosen, a mage-heavy group, marched to Breezewarren, which was a Harengon wheat farming settlement that was under attack by Volgard raiders. As a strategic action, they chose to scout, revealing the map and allowing for a few units to enter the map early. 3 knights and a mage with the invisibility spell served as their advanced scouting force, and when they arrived, they saw a much larger army than they were expecting. Volgard was searching for something here and taking supplies from the locals whom they considered to be already conquered. The Chosen's mission was to force the raiders to retreat, but they'd eventually discover that the enemy wanted more than just supplies from this quaint little town. Lego Legion, a group of mostly laborers, siege units, and a few guards, chose to fortify the capital city of the Tiny Kingdoms as their strategic action. This added extra defenses and strategic buildings to that location, and I assured them that they would get advance notice of any enemy action against the city. For their mission, they traveled to the open grassland of Greenfield Meadows. Their primary objective was to turn an abandoned fortress into a fully fledged castle town, making full use of the new structure's rule set I created. This group enjoyed a couple peaceful turns of construction before they ever even saw the enemy, but when they did, they came in a shockingly overwhelming force. Stormed Huzzah, a fast attack warband made up of mostly knights and monstrosities, partnered up with S3, an infantry warband focused on logistics and supply, to take on the enemy directly. The primary objective at Drakestone was to resupply the fortress and, for a greater reward, break the enemy siege. S3 started the group effort by scouting ahead like the Chosen, sending in a group of mages on the backs of their willing sky beasts, hoping to reach the kobolds' fortress early and bolster their defenses. Stormed Huzzah instead hit the books, taking the research strategic action, and learned about the history of the conflict, the kind of allied support they'd received there, and on a more quantifiable level, some of the stat lines of the enemy forces. The first few turns included mostly deployment and setup. The faster units maneuvered to the flank or to reach faraway targets, and the slower ones advanced more directly. What surprised me was how much backline logistics work would be done in the first 3 turns. The warbands did an excellent job delivering their soldiers to the front on carts and building structures and casting teleportation circle magic in the back. At Breezewarren, the Chosen was presented with the means to unlock a new spell for the future. They'd have to rescue a prisoner from a tower, the archmage known as Zephyr, who would join the fight and teach the players the new spell. After a less than stellar first impression involving the theft of the allied player's mana to regain his own strength, the mage was eventually allowed to fight for the town. Meanwhile, the scouts did their best to harass the raiders with their bows and lances, and the soldiers pushed forward, ultimately splitting into 2 groups. At Greenfield Meadows, the fortress was far from the player's starting position, but a few units managed to be dropped off early thanks to some speedy supply carts. Mages Conjure and Summon, who both brought the Conjure Palisade spell, started creating lines of palisade walls around the old fortress. The rest of the warband had to be content with sprinting on foot. One small group started working on a side project. This was a medical center that would earn the company extra payment and a permanent boost to the functionality of the hospital structure if it was completed. After meeting the ruler of Drakestone, which was a giant green dragon named Chlorfix Aladdinus, the mages and sky beasts of S3 spread out to delay the enemy as best they could. The central fortress was enduring volleys from Illyrian catapults who were hurling heavy stones at their defenses. Meanwhile, infrastructure was set up on the back line. Mages were conjuring teleportation circles for future use. Supply-generating structures were built by laborers. Supply carts started running units to the front lines, and what became known as the Great Cavalry Charge of Stormed Huzzah saw 24 units burning through the city at maximum speed, intending to bypass the enemy's main force of infantry and take out the siege on the hill before the enemy's reinforcements could arrive. At Breezewarren, the soldiers met the undead in force and clashed and formed engagements, which are a kind of chaotic melee that prevents units from easily running away. And the Chosen's infantry proved to be extremely sturdy and survivable, especially with healing magic being cast from behind their lines. Their cavalry used the town's structures to their best ability, weaving between portions of cover to get ride-by attacks with lance and bow. At Greenfield, LEGO Legion started upgrading their palisades to stone walls, ready to hold against the large force that they spotted. A small group of wounded Harengon were seen fleeing from the advancing cavalry, which was a much larger force than expected. The Legion really didn't have enough soldiers to brave the open field. They did have a plan, however. An apothecary was set up in the medical facility, smiths were constructed behind the walls, and units spent most of their turns using the crafting system I developed. Multiple potions, bows, swords, and hammers were made in preparation for the enemy's attack. It was no replacement for well-armed professional soldiers, but it was enough to arm the various non-combatants in the fort, and their little militia began to grow in power. At Drakestone, the players began to enjoy their new network of teleportation circles. One particular supply cart teleported 5 times in a single turn, picking up and dropping off units along the way. S3's major infantry column finally reached the front and braced against the enemy's much greater numbers. The Great Cavalry Charge met the lines of the enemy, and it was absolutely devastating, much more so than I was expecting. They rolled over the enemy like a cloud of thunder and lightning. Demons, brutes, champions, even their unique war wagon units fell to the charge. We also saw the first player unit deaths in the campaign. A sky beast named Skynerd fell to arrow fire. A monstrosity named Lumra died after continuing the push just a little too far. The charge was successful, but at a heavy cost. S3 and Stormed Huzzah managed to complete their mission before the other warbands, in no small part thanks to good tactics, exceptional logistics, and the bravest, perhaps foolhardiest headlong charge into enemy lines we've seen yet. Apparently this was a long-standing tradition of the Storm group, dating back to some of the earliest meta-campaigns. In the end, Stormed Huzzah may have seen the most player deaths, but in terms of big-picture thinking, were also the deadliest group of the 4 warbands. Perhaps the digital lives lost were worth the cost. Thanks to their early rep, the 2 warbands had the time to take a strategic action, and they both quickly chose to bail out LEGO Legion before they were overrun. At Breezewarren, the Chosen were shown the entrance to a cave system beneath the city. Several units explored the cave together, approaching from multiple directions. Inside, they discovered the enemy's goal. They were trying to recover a magical banner, one that would improve the strength of their nearby undead. When discovered, the enemy raised this new banner and created a horde of undead unlike anything the players had seen before. On the surface, an elite enemy unit, a Death Knight, met the player's line. Despite losing his mount to well-placed ranged fire, he stood up with a flaming sword and continued the fight, but was eventually slain by a pair of units working together to flank him. On the final turns, one unit was able to claim the Death Knight's flaming sword, which became a permanent addition to that unit's equipment, usable in future campaigns. The surface units scrambled to cut off the fleeing necromancers, and thanks to a haste spell, a brave supply cart, and nearly every mage and knight in the company attacking at once, they took out both enemy units and won the day. At Greenfield, the walls were breached by charging enemy cavalry, and I had to GM the awkward moment where I killed my own unit. Rest in peace, Korsda. You were awesome. Hope was fading fast as the enemy spilled into the castle town, but at their darkest hour, S3 and Stormed Huzzah arrived in the south of the map, having completed their reinforced strategic action. Utilizing the teleportation circle in the fort, the reinforcements flooded the grounds of the castle town, saving LEGO Legion and rebuilding the walls. From the other side of the enemy, nearly every knight and warbeast in the company charged together against the enemy infantry columns, and there was no contest. The enemy was absolutely decimated. That's the power of teamwork. The day was won for the company, and now the enemy knows that the Tiny Kingdoms will not go down without a fight. I'll end once again with a huge thank you to both my Patreon supporters and everyone who participated in Chapter 1 of the campaign. Castles and Crusaders is, and always will be, free to play and open to everyone from all walks of life. You know, I might be fighting a zombie centaur, beating a dead horse, but I do hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please leave a like, a subscribe, and make an attack roll against that notification bell. It really, really helps the channel more than you might think. And if you're looking to join in the fun, I look forward to seeing you all in January 2026 for Chapter 2. Thanks for watching, much love, and bye-bye.